All right. Hey, Brennan, how you doing today?
Good, Mike. How are you?
So we have a good topic today. It's called PHP WordPress Update. You just helped me out with this on one of my websites, so I'm all too familiar with the fear of what's going to happen with PHP in my website. Can you tell us what is PHP, first of all?
Yeah, so PHP, Mike, is a coding language. So the way I always explain it to people is, common sense terms is we've got Android phones and we've got iPhones, right? So, PHP is kind of like your Android. It's open source. It's an operating system that runs websites. The other one is .NET. .NET is Windows based, and that's kind of more like your iPhone. It's a little bit more secure. It's a little bit more locked down. There's a lot more licenses involved. So really, PHP is the code behind the scenes that runs your website. And a lot of websites these days use PHP. So most of the WordPress, every WordPress site, Drupal, Joomla, Magento, a lot of the different content management platforms are PHP based.
Okay, so it's sort of fundamental to your WordPress website.
It is. It's the behind the scenes code of what's actually going on behind WordPress. So every WordPress site has PHP behind it.
Got you. So what if you don't do it? What's the risk?
So every WordPress site has PHP. Now there's different versions of PHP that are out there. So just like on your smartphone, you'll get a notification that, hey, there's an update. And typically those updates give you new functionality, but they're also done for security reasons. So if you're running an old version of PHP, just like any piece of software, there's probably holes in it and gaps and vulnerabilities and things that people have figured out how to hack into. So you definitely run a large security risk. And the older that it is, the larger that risk is. The other issue, Mike, is that eventually things reach what are called end of life in software. And what that means is that it's no longer supported. So there will come a day in time where, that PHP version can't run with the server version or the software version or the WordPress version. And so you're basically at that point forced to update.
So if you're in the WP admin part of your WordPress site and you see the PHP update required, it's right at the top. You've got to do it at some point.
Yeah, so the rule of thumb, Mike, so a new PHP version comes out every year. And the way that they do it is that when that new version comes out, it's good for 2 to 3 years. So you don't have to do every single update. If an update is due and if it's required, WordPress will tell you. If you have a WordPress website, it'll be right on your dashboard. But otherwise, if you haven't done one for 2 or 3 years, you should consider doing one anyways, even if it's not telling you, because at that point, your site is going to be reaching that end of life point where you're going to have those security issues and you're going to have those compatibility issues.
Yeah, well, I've had a couple of sites, in fact, have been hacked before, and it's so frustrating.
It's cheaper to just maintain it than it is to fix it, right? And the hard part is that when you get hacked or you have those issues, it's a fire drill. Everyone's jumping to try to fix it. Your customers are seeing bad things on your website, so it's a bad look from a marketing standpoint, obviously. And it's a security risk. If you have a website that's collecting personal information, taking credit cards, whatever it may be, you don't want some piece of software, sitting back there skimming and taking credit cards or taking people's personal information.
Gotcha. So what is involved? I know when I asked you, I said, hey, what's this going to cost? You gave me like this huge range of, it could be like what, 2 hours to 10 hours. We got to what's involved in kind of.
Yeah, so the reason for that range, Mike, is because the PHP upgrade itself is pretty easy. It takes about an hour. The part that is the unknown is that every website is different. And when PHP gets upgraded, certain coding protocols or scripts become what's called deprecated, or they don't work anymore. And so what that depends on is, one site that we update might only have 1 or 2 scripts that are deprecated or don't work, in which case it's a very quick process. Other sites might have 100 of them or 1,000 of them, right? And so we don't know that until we actually do the update and actually run and see, line by line in your code, what needs to be changed and updated. So when we quote a PHP update, I usually tell people, hey, what I think it's going to be, kind of what my gut is, because we have experience doing it. But I always give them a range because, if it's easier, we'll charge them less. If it's more difficult, then it costs a little bit more.
Right. So it just comes down to your time involved.
Just comes down to time and materials, exactly.
What if I had let's say an older site that you had thousands of posts on it, would a bigger, older website typically cost more, or just?
No, the size of the site doesn't typically matter. What matters, Mike, it depends on what that content is. So if each page is like a unique template, each the coding isn't in the posts on WordPress, right? It's in your templates and it's in your behind the scenes code. So if you had 1,000 templates, that would cost more. But if you had a site that was a simple blog, let's say, I don't care if you have one blog post or if you have 1,000,000, as long as it's all using the same template. From our perspective for a PHP upgrade, it's just that one template that we're updating.
That makes a lot of sense. So this is something I think you already mentioned, that every couple of years it's going to be updated. So even if you do a PHP update today, another year, 2, 3 down the road, you're going to have that banner flash up and say, hey, it's time for another one.
Just like the old smartphone, you got to keep it updated. It's the same thing. For all of our clients, we usually send them a quote every 2 years just to stay ahead of it and say, hey, you guys are due for this. But if it's something where you have a site that's running on PHP and it hasn't been updated in some time, we could take a look at it and tell you what version you're on, tell you if that's a secure version or not. And if it's not, give you an idea of what's involved in updating it.
Gotcha. So just to wrap up, it sounds like the risks, you've got to do it at some point. Like you said, the analogy of the smartphone is great. At some point, it's either going to stop working or you're going to get hacked.
Yeah, or it's either going to stop working, right? Because you're not compatible, or you're going to get hacked. Or it's and the worst part of that, Mike, is it always happens at the worst time when you're out of town traveling on a business meeting, and all of a sudden your site's down or somebody texts you. So it's something you should stay on top of. It's not something that requires daily or even monthly attention, but every couple of years you got to stay on top of it.
Gotcha. So if you're getting the WordPress PHP update, get in contact with us and we can get you an estimate on how long it'll take to get it fixed. Thanks, Brendan.
That's right. Thanks, Mike.